Janice Langston had counted down to many things in her life. Her wedding day, the birth of her daughter, the final mortgage payment on their brick two-story in Oak Ridge. But this countdown felt different. Heavy, nostalgic, bittersweet. In exactly 1 week, she would say goodbye to the place that had defined the second half of her life. Cambridge Sloan Financial Services. 34 years. That's how long she'd been there. She'd started as a temp filing tax forms back in the late 80s and ended as the office manager. Respected, trusted, the quiet backbone of a place where turnover was as regular as flu season. And now, at 64, it was time to go. Her co-workers had already begun treating her like a walking memory. "We're going to miss you so much," they'd say, slapping her shoulder in the break room. "Who's going to run this place without you?" Someone joked near the copier. Even Ron, her longtime friend and boss, looked like he was dreading the farewell as much as she was. The official retirement send-off was scheduled for Friday night. Dinner, drinks, speeches, and a surprise slideshow that Ron insisted she not peek at. "You'll cry," he'd said. "We want that photo op." Her daughter Erica was flying in from Chicago for it, and even her husband, Walter, had promised he'd make a proper speech. Walter had retired 2 years earlier and had mostly filled his days golfing, tinkering with tools in the garage, and complaining about modern coffee makers. He hadn't been particularly enthusiastic about Janice still working, but he'd been supportive enough. Recently, though, he'd seemed distant, distracted, polite but detached. She chalked it up to anxiety over change. After all, they'd be together full-time now. No more "how was work" texts, no more alone time between 9 and 5. The shift was going to be real for both of them. Still, something didn't sit right. And a large part of that something had blonde highlights, 4-inch heels, and an unsettling way of always being nearby. Lena Warner. Janice's junior colleague, 22 years younger, always chipper, always eager to impress. She joined the company 5 years ago and quickly carved a niche for herself, organizing events, staying late for team spirit, always volunteering to help with special projects. Lena had volunteered, practically begged, to help with Janice's retirement party. "You've been like a mentor to me," she'd said once, placing her hand on Janice's forearm. "It would mean a lot if I could help send you off right." Janice had smiled back. But she didn't miss the way Lena laughed too hard at Walter's tired jokes during the company picnic. She didn't miss how Lena had texted her at 9 p.m. one evening to ask, "Does Walter like carrot cake or chocolate? I want to get the right flavor for your party cake. Why not just ask me directly?" She told herself not to be cynical. Retirement made people weird, emotional. Maybe Lena was just trying too hard to be kind. Maybe Walter appreciated being included. Maybe she needed to stop thinking like a suspicious old woman. But the feeling wouldn't leave. The way Walter chuckled with Lena at the conference room table when Janice walked in. The way Lena had mentioned offhand that she and Walter had once bumped into each other at the farmer's market without Janice. The way Walter, when asked if he liked the venue Lena had chosen for the party, replied, "Yeah, Lena's got good taste." He didn't even catch his own phrasing. Not "you both picked a great place." Just Lena. Still, Janice pushed the doubts down. She had bigger things to think about. 34 years of loyalty, her team, her legacy. She didn't want to ruin this moment with paranoia. But as the clock ticked toward Friday night, and Lena continued to show up with party favors and secret winks, and Walter continued to check his phone more often and turn it over when she walked in, Janice's countdown wasn't just to retirement. It was to revelation. She didn't know how or when, but something was about to come undone. The week leading up to the send-off felt like walking through a carefully staged play. Janice moved through her final days at work with grace, collecting farewell cards, training her replacement, and clearing out 3 decades of cluttered desk drawers. Her co-workers tiptoed around her, some hugging her too long, others looking misty-eyed after quick goodbyes. Everyone said all the right things. Everyone, except the 2 people who made her gut twist tighter with each passing day. Lena had taken full control of the retirement party details, and Walter didn't seem to mind. One afternoon, as Janice was finishing up payroll, she noticed Lena laughing near the water cooler, again with Walter, who had dropped by to take her out to lunch. At least that's what he told Janice. But lunch hadn't happened. He said Lena asked him to stay for just a few minutes to run through some audio details. Audio details? Since when did Walter know anything about sound systems? Don't worry, Lena chirped with her high-pitched laugh. Your surprise playlist is coming together perfectly. Janice smiled, polite as always, but something itched beneath her skin. Lena was wearing that tight, cream-colored blouse again, the one Janice had once joked was 2 sizes too small and 3 inches too low. Walter didn't even glance her way when Janice walked past them. At home, it was more of the same. Walter was quiet during dinner, checking his phone far too often. When she asked who he was texting, he muttered, "Just Erica. She's confirming her flight." Later that night, Janice checked Erica's messages. Her daughter hadn't messaged Walter in days. She didn't confront him, not yet. She was gathering something far more powerful than rage. Evidence. The next morning, she got her first accidental clue. She was placing leftover frittata into a container when Walter's phone buzzed on the counter. He'd gone to grab the mail. Janice glanced at the screen, expecting a weather alert or sports notification. Instead, a message from a contact named E. Warren flashed briefly. "You looked good in blue yesterday. That tie was dangerous." E. Warren. Her breath caught. Lena's full name, Elena Warren. He had her saved under an alias, a decoy, but not clever enough. Janice didn't open the phone. She didn't need to. The message alone was damning enough. The words didn't belong to a colleague planning a retirement party. They belonged to a woman staking her claim, subtly, smugly, like someone who thought she had already won. That night, Janice told her daughter everything. They sat in the kitchen, long after the dishes were done, wine half full in their glasses. "I knew something was off," Erica muttered, arms folded. "Dad barely looks at you when Lena's around. I've seen the way she watches him." Janice pressed her lips together. "She thinks I won't fight, that I'll step aside because it's the end of the road." Erica reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "You're not the kind of woman who steps aside." Janice didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years, not since her sister's funeral. But that night, alone in her room, she finally let the tears fall. Not for Walter, not for the betrayal, but for the way she had silenced herself for so long, convinced that dignity meant staying quiet, that strength meant swallowing hurt. But now she realized something deeper. Dignity means not letting people walk over you twice. And strength means calling things what they are. Janice opened her laptop and started a private folder labeled "Retirement Party Unedited." The stage was nearly set, and the final act would be hers to deliver. The next few days moved with deceptive calm, like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Janice returned to the office Wednesday morning with a fresh smile and a floral blouse, her heels clicking with renewed purpose. She greeted everyone warmly, handed out donuts, and complimented Ron's outdated necktie with such charm he actually blushed. No one suspected a thing. But inside, Janice was sharpening her gaze, collecting moments like fingerprints. It started small. She passed by the break room mid-morning and caught Lena on the phone. Her voice was low, laced with laughter. "Relax, it's just a toast. You'll be brilliant. I'll give you a cue if you need it." Janice paused just outside the door. "I promise," Lena added. "I'll be wearing the blue dress. You know, the one you said you liked." Janice's breath hitched. The blue dress. Walter had complimented her once in that exact shade during a dinner party. "That color makes you glow," he'd said to Janice, back when he used to look at me like I mattered. Janice stepped in. Lena jumped like she'd been stung, quickly ending the call. "Oh, just confirming delivery times," she said, too fast, too bright. "Florists are such a nightmare." Janice smiled calmly. "You must be exhausted. All this extra effort for someone else's goodbye." Lena blinked. "Just want it to be special," she murmured, voice tight. Janice nodded, then slowly leaned in. "You will be remembered for this," she said softly, "one way or another." Lena didn't respond. She just turned, fidgeted with a stack of paper cups, and didn't meet Janice's eyes. That night, Janice opened the retirement party unedited folder and added a new item. Timestamp, 10:42 a.m. phone call. Blue dress comment, nervous tone. She wasn't building a case for the court. She was building one for clarity. For herself. So when the final moment came and everything tipped forward, she would not second guess what she'd seen, what she'd felt. The next day, a quiet puzzle piece fell right into her lap. Ron, ever disorganized but well-meaning, sent over the final itinerary for the event. Janice was scanning the guest list when she noticed something strange. There was a private rehearsal dinner, noted from 2 nights prior, for the speakers. She hadn't been invited. Walter had told her he was grabbing dinner with an old client. She scanned the attached notes. Toast practice, microphone test, speech coordination. Lena and Walter were the only names listed for that block. Janice's chest burned. She checked the bank statement that evening. Walter had withdrawn $250 from their joint account that night. The next line was a charge from Vincenzo's, a dimly lit Italian place they'd gone to only once, on their anniversary years ago. She didn't scream. She didn't even wake Erica. Instead, she opened her journal and calmly wrote, "He took her where he once took me. He lied. He coordinated a rehearsal with the woman replacing me at my send-off. It was no longer suspicion, no longer fog. It was betrayal. Polished, premeditated, and smug. The kind that doesn't just stab, it slices your legacy in half." Janice closed the journal and looked at herself in the mirror. The same woman stared back, just older, wiser, more tired. But her reflection didn't flinch. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't swallowing her pain. She was preparing to expose it. And when she did, it wouldn't be with tears or rage. It would be with grace so sharp it cut clean through. Janice knew that betrayal left trails, not just in the heart, but in the small, careless details people forgot to hide. On Thursday morning, less than 24 hours before her retirement party, she made her move. She arrived at the office before anyone else. A lifetime of habit had taught her that nothing meaningful happens during working hours. It happens before the building fully wakes up or after it goes to sleep. She stepped into the admin office where Lena had been managing all the event planning files. It wasn't technically her space, but Janice still had keys. She'd kept the master set quietly when they started training her replacement. The room was neat, too neat. On Lena's desk sat a folder labeled Senior Farewell Materials. Inside, Janice found seating charts, a speech draft printed in cursive font, and a USB labeled Final Playlist. She didn't touch any of it. Not yet. Instead, she walked over to the communal printer and tapped the touchscreen. Recent print jobs still cached in memory. She scrolled back through yesterday's activity. Halfway down, one caught her eye. Walter_speech_draft.docs, printed by Lena Warner. Timestamp, 4:17 p.m. Janice's hands curled slightly, but her breath remained calm. She opened the staff lounge computer and accessed the shared server. It didn't take long. Lena hadn't even renamed the document when saving it to her event folder. And there it was, a full draft of Walter's retirement speech for Janice. Except, it wasn't really about Janice. The speech was riddled with vague sentiment. Sometimes we only understand someone's impact when we step outside the boundaries of titles and labels. And it's strange how certain people enter our lives unexpectedly and shift the meaning of our future. Not one specific mention of Janice's years of service. Not one detail only a husband would know. But here's what made Janice stop cold. The final paragraph read, "You taught me what patience looks like, how to trust a second chance, and how to rediscover joy after the noise fades. This night is yours, but my gratitude is ours." Our? Janice didn't need a dictionary to know who our referred to. She printed the page, quietly, slipped it into her purse. Then she deleted the draft from the server and replaced it with a blank document titled Janice Final Speech. Let them scramble. That afternoon, she had lunch with Ron under the guise of final party prep. You sure you're okay? He asked at one point, frowning. You seem quiet. She looked up, her smile soft and unreadable. I'm just saving my words, she said. I think this send-off might be more memorable than anyone expects. He chuckled, oblivious. But Janice meant every syllable. That evening, the final thread fell into her hands. Ben, the young catering assistant, was setting up a few floral arrangements near the reception room when Janice walked past. He recognized her. Oh, you're the honoree, Miss Langston, right? She smiled politely. That's me. He fidgeted. I saw you the other night at Vincenzo's. Janice paused. Oh, I wasn't there. Ben looked confused. Really? I swear I saw your husband there. With that lady from here. Blonde, blue dress. They were sitting close. Like, really close. Janice leaned in slightly, still calm. Did you see them talking about anything? He shrugged. They were practicing something. She was timing him. Toast, maybe? I don't know. Janice gently touched his arm. Thank you, Ben. She walked away before he could see the pain behind her poise. Back home, she opened the folder she had prepared days ago. In it now sat a screenshot of the phone message from E. Warren, her journal notes with timestamps, the email calendar showing Lena and Walter's secret rehearsal, the Vincenzo's receipt, a copy of the speech draft Lena had printed. It was enough, not for court, but for clarity. Tomorrow night, she would walk into a room full of people expecting to toast her, and she would give them something unforgettable. Not rage, not scandal, but truth, delivered with the kind of grace that silences a room more than shouting ever could. Because Janice had learned something in her 34 years of service. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is tell the truth without blinking and walk away without begging. The night of the retirement send-off arrived with crisp linen napkins, champagne flutes clinking, and a golden banner strung across the back wall that read, "Thank you, Janice, 34 years of excellence." The room buzzed with polite energy, clients, co-workers, friends, everyone dressed in their best, sipping sparkling wine, swapping stories about the old days, and stealing glances at Janice like she was the guest of honor at a farewell gala, which technically she was. But under the surface, Janice felt like a woman attending her own eulogy. She wore a deep plum dress, satin, understated, elegant. Her hair swept back, her lipstick bold. She looked unshakable, regal, like someone who had already survived the storm. Walter arrived late. He entered with his signature grin and a bouquet of calla lilies, as if a few flowers could fix what had already been shattered. People clapped. He walked toward Janice like nothing was wrong. She accepted the bouquet with a calm nod, not bothering to meet his eyes. Lena flitted through the room like a hummingbird in a glass cage, overdressed in a cobalt blue cocktail dress, a neckline too daring for a work function, and eyes that flickered constantly toward Walter. She whispered something to the DJ, then to the waitstaff, and finally stood near the podium like it had been built just for her. Erica stood quietly near her mother, her arms crossed, jaw tight. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. Janice smiled faintly. "I've never been more sure of anything." Dinner passed slowly. Speeches began. Ron opened with warm words about Janice's early years, her dedication, the way she used to leave sticky notes with encouraging quotes on the break room fridge. The crowd laughed, clapped, a few missed it up. Then came Lena. She walked to the microphone with trembling hands and practiced sadness. "When I first started at Cambridge Sloan, I was just 37, unsure of myself, intimidated. But Janice took me in like a friend, like a mentor. Janice watched her like a hawk watches a rabbit, pretending not to be scared. And while we say goodbye tonight, I just want to say thank you for showing me what real connection looks like. You taught me that sometimes love shows up in unexpected places." The word love hung in the air like a warning. Janice glanced around the room. People looked puzzled. Walter cleared his throat and looked down. Erica's hand gripped her wineglass so tightly the stem might snap. Lena stepped aside. Walter walked up. He began his speech with all the charm Janice once fell for. Jokes, gentle praise, hollow admiration. But the words were safe. He'd rewritten them. He knew. Still, Janice let him finish. When the applause settled, she rose. The room hushed. She walked to the podium, heels silent on the polished floor, her back straight, her voice steady. "Thank you, everyone," she said, "for being here, for the laughter, for the memories. I've spent over 3 decades building something with all of you, and I'm proud of what we accomplished together." A pause. "And since tonight is about gratitude, I thought I'd take a moment to express mine to the 2 people who worked so closely on this event." She turned to look at Walter, then Lena. "To my husband and to my coworker, you 2 certainly made this night unforgettable." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Lena stiffened. Walter looked at his shoes. Janice continued, "I was told this night was meant to honor truth, loyalty, dedication. But I think it also deserves honesty." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "This," she said, "is a draft of a speech. It's not the one you just heard. It's the one Lena printed 2 days ago. For Walter." Gasps. She handed it to Erica, who held it up like evidence in a courtroom. "It's filled with vague metaphors about rediscovering joy and how a real connection transcends titles. But let's be clear. What happened here wasn't spiritual. It wasn't accidental. It was a choice." She turned back to the crowd. "When you give your life to something or someone, you expect mistakes, sure. But you don't expect them to be shared over wine at a restaurant where your anniversary once meant something. You don't expect your legacy to be used as the backdrop for someone else's affair." Lena was frozen, pale, eyes wide. Walter's lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. "I didn't come here to cause a scene," Janice said, her voice calm. "I came here to leave one. A moment. A truth. So no woman in this room ever questions again whether her intuition is paranoia or whether her silence is strength." She set the microphone down gently and walked off the stage. The applause started slow. 1 person, then 2, then a ripple that filled the room. Not the clapping of a celebration, but the sound of respect, of awakening. Janice didn't look back. She didn't need to. Janice didn't need chaos. She needed clarity. And as she walked away from the podium that night, heels tapping softly on the tile, she knew that every word she'd spoken had landed exactly where it needed to, like raindrops on dry earth. Quiet, deliberate, impossible to ignore. The room behind her wasn't silent. It was stunned. A ripple of shocked murmurs rose like static electricity. Co-workers looked between Walter and Lena, eyebrows raised, unsure if what they just heard was real. It was very real. Walter remained standing near the mic, frozen, still clutching his now useless speech in one hand. His lips parted as if to speak, but he said nothing. What could he say? There were no metaphors left to hide behind, no half-truths, no charming diversions. Just exposure. Lena sat at her table like a statue, jaw tight, smile gone, cheeks pale beneath layers of makeup. Her wineglass trembled slightly in her hand. She didn't even attempt to defend herself. She couldn't. The evidence hadn't just been spoken. It had been seen in the conviction of Janice's calm, in the heavy silence that followed her words. Janice walked straight to her daughter, who stood waiting near the side entrance, arms crossed and eyes blazing with pride. Erica opened her purse, handed Janice a small envelope. Janice turned on her heel and walked back toward the podium, not to speak again, but to deliver. She approached Walter slowly. He looked up at her, his expression a strange mix of confusion and desperation. He whispered, "Please, don't." She said nothing. She simply extended the envelope. Inside, copies of the speech Lena printed, a photo of the Vincenzo's receipt, a screenshot of the message from E. Warren, and a typed note that read, "You won't lie your way out of this. Jay." She handed it to him like a final gift, a mirror he could no longer avoid. Walter didn't open it in front of her. He couldn't. He just took it with shaking hands, looked at the floor, and nodded. Janice turned and walked away again. But this time, she smiled. Not the practiced smile of a hostess or the hollow smile of a woman used to swallowing pain, but a real one. Because it was done. Let the room whisper. Let them guess the details, connect the dots, fill in the spaces between what was said and what was implied. Janice didn't owe anyone more than what she had already given. Ron caught up with her near the exit, eyes wide, voice low. "Janice, I don't know what to say." She rested a hand on his arm. "Then don't," she said. "Let the night speak for itself." And it did. The rest of the event unraveled. The toast stopped. The music dimmed. The guests left in awkward waves, some patting Janice gently on the back, others avoiding her eyes altogether, unsure if she was devastated or powerful, or both. Lena left quietly through the back, jacket clutched around her shoulders like a shield. No goodbye, no apology. Walter remained at the edge of the room, sitting alone with the untouched calla lilies wilting beside him. Rotator, Erica, and Janice drove off in silence, the moonlight catching in the windshield. Halfway home, Erica whispered, "You didn't just end a marriage. You made a statement." Janice turned to her, voice low and calm. "I didn't end anything. He ended it the moment he gave what was mine to someone who hadn't earned it." Erica nodded, eyes brimming. Janice faced forward again, her voice barely audible. "I just decided not to sit quietly next to the wreckage anymore." The following morning, the house was quiet. Janice woke up before sunrise, not because she had to, retirement meant no alarm clocks now, but because her mind was wide awake, steady, alive. She brewed her coffee the way she liked it, dark, no sugar, with a splash of oat milk. Then she opened the kitchen window and let the morning breeze pour in. Across the table, Walter's chair sat empty. And for the first time in 40 years, she didn't care whether he ever filled it again. She had spent a lifetime folding his socks, timing dinner around his moods, listening to his long-winded stories about stocks and golf and childhood friends she'd never met. She had shown up, stayed loyal, kept the family moving forward. Even when he grew emotionally distant. Even when she felt invisible in her own marriage. Now the fog had lifted. He texted her mid-morning. "Walter, can we talk? Please? Just you and me. I messed up. I see that now." Janice stared at the message for a long while. She typed nothing. Instead, she opened her desk drawer, pulled out the manila envelope she'd prepared weeks earlier, before the party, before the footage, before the final pieces came together. Inside, completed divorce paperwork, signed and ready. She dropped it off at her attorney's office that afternoon. Walter didn't live with her anymore. That line had been drawn the moment he let Lena linger in spaces where a loyal husband should have stood. He packed a bag and moved into a small rental apartment near the edge of town the next day. Wordlessly, almost shamefully. They didn't argue. She simply told him, "I won't live in a house where I was replaced behind my back." Walter didn't protest, because he knew she meant it. As for Lena, she disappeared from the office a week later. Ron called Janice to let her know. She submitted her resignation, said she needed a fresh start. Janice almost laughed. Fresh start? That's what she had just claimed. Not Lena, not the woman who used her husband to climb ladders and write poems inside someone else's send-off. Janice replied simply, "I hope the door didn't hit her on the way out." Erica moved back home for a few weeks just to be around. They spent long afternoons rearranging furniture, donating old clothes, repainting the guest room. "You're nesting," Erica joked one evening. Like you're about to be reborn. Janice smiled. Maybe I am. For the first time in years, her life was hers alone. No shared calendars. No obligatory anniversaries. No pretending. Her name had always been on the deed to the house, but now it felt like her fingerprints were finally on the walls. People whispered, of course. Some coworkers emailed, sympathetic, curious, unsure of what to say. Others avoided her at the grocery store, as if truth were contagious. One neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, stopped her during a walk. I heard what happened. It's awful. Janice nodded gently. It is, but it's over. That was all she needed to say, because the truth wasn't scandalous anymore. It was healing. Each day felt lighter, not joyful, not yet, but clean, uncluttered. Janice began reading again, journaling every evening, calling old friends she'd lost touch with while working full-time and being everyone's emotional crutch. She didn't plan revenge. She didn't need it. Walter had already sentenced himself to a life of quiet regret. And Lena? She'd always been temporary. Even her betrayal felt shallow in hindsight, a woman trying to mimic the strength Janice carried naturally, only to realize she couldn't bear the weight of it. And what had Janice lost, really? A man who didn't value her. A job she had already outgrown. A mask she no longer needed to wear. What she gained, though, that was something else entirely. Self-respect, control, peace. And the beautiful silence that comes after the truth finally speaks. Janice stood at the edge of the overlook near Miller's Bluff, watching the sun melt into the horizon. The sky was a stretch of orange and lavender, as if the day itself had softened to make space for her healing. In her hands was a journal, leather-bound, gifted to her by Erica on her last day at the office. On the front, engraved in soft gold, were the words, "Write what they didn't expect." Janice smiled. She didn't expect to feel this free so soon. She didn't expect to enjoy silence this much. She didn't expect that losing what she thought was essential, her job, her marriage, her routines, would open up space for something richer. She thought about the send-off, the applause, the silence that followed her words, and then the power of walking away, not bitter, not screaming, just finished. That kind of strength? You don't buy it, you earn it. One betrayal at a time. Her phone buzzed beside her on the bench. A message from Ron. Ron, a few people are asking if you'd ever consider consulting. You left big shoes to fill. She typed back slowly. Janice, tell them I'm not filling anyone's shoes anymore. I'm walking barefoot, somewhere better. She hit send and turned off her phone. No more constant notifications. No more splitting herself into pieces for other people's comfort. She closed the journal and looked out over the water. This was her sunset, not the kind that marked the end of something, but the kind that came before the next season. She was no longer a wife hiding her heartbreak, no longer the quiet figure in the back office keeping the lights on while others took the credit. She was Janice Langston, divorced, retired, awake, and unshaken. She stood slowly, the breeze tugging gently at her blouse. Behind her, the parking lot was empty. In front of her, the world waited, unmapped, undemanding, and finally hers. She whispered, more to herself than anyone. I didn't leave with nothing. I left with everything they tried to take and couldn't. With that, Janice walked toward her car, the sun at her back, a new chapter calling. Not a send-off, a beginning. Dent.